So what is up, guys? It's Nistro here. I know you can barely see me right now, but I'm sure you guys don't care. In the same article that we got the Beltlink Wall Dragon and True Shadow of the Six Samurai, the Six Samurai Two Shadow. I don't know. Well, whatever it was named. Its name was. Both of them were revealed in this article, and also we got some new support or for what is now officially an archetype, Mythical Beast. The first one being Mythical Beast Cerberus, which actually got very famous in Duel Links just because of its ability to stack its attack every time a spell card is activated. Although it does have to lose all those spell counters after it battles, like still being a spellcaster that can go up to like 10,000 sometimes. People got up to that much. It was pretty damn good. Now, in the actual game, I don't think it was used too much. Spell counters themselves haven't really been the best thing in Yu-Gi-Oh! And there's something that's just kind of fallen off the map. Like, people forget that spell counters are a thing. And, with this new spell counter support, since, these guys are going to be using spell counters, we'll just have to see exactly how that goes. So, the first one, Pendulum Monster, Mythical Beast Jackal. And so it's a level 1 Dark Spellcaster Pendulum Effect monster, scale 4, 1400 defense. And so you're going to use the Pendulum Effect and discard its name once per turn. If you do not control another card in your Pendulum Zone, you can target one face up card you control that you can place a spell counter on. Destroy this card, and if you do, place one spell counter on that card. So immediately, he's actually not that bad. He may be a scale 4, but his effect is to pop himself, so he's not going to stay around for long. You're only really going to use him on the pendulum scale if you want to put spell counters on other cards. And you know what? I don't really hate that. And activating him on a pendulum scale already counts as the activation of a spell card. So you're going to be usually um, cards gain spell counters when you activate spell cards. So when he activates himself, that's going to be 1, and then you can use his effect to destroy himself. That's going to be 2, and the pendulum zones can be open. So in case you want to put back row down, or you want to put actual pendulum scale up, you have the option. But he has to be the only card in the pendulum zone. So your opponent could try to like gimp you and like try to leave like another card in your under pendulum zone that like isn't as useful. So just be wary about that. And so a monster effect is that each time a spell counter is activated, place one spell counter on this card when it resolves. I'm glad that they clarified that because I remember that a lot of people shut up, Ryan. I remember that a lot of people with the field spell, the magical citadel of Endamine. So what it does is that when a spell card is activated, it gets a spell counter. Now it doesn't say specifically at resolution, so there was a lot of time where if you didn't really have judges around or proper ruling, people did kind of like bend the rules a bit because what they would do is that back then Twin Twisters wasn't around. It was just like Dust Tornado and MST. And so if you would try to MST the card on activation, what usually they would say like, oh, well, it gains a spell counter when you activate MST, and then it could remove a spell counter to stop itself from being destroyed, so you can't MST it. And eventually we learned that wasn't how it worked, but it's like there was quite a period of time where that was really confusing. So now I'm glad that they clarified that you place a spell counter after the card resolves, or when it resolves. Does that mean... Wait, does that mean while it's resolving, or after the resolved effect happens? Well, I'm guessing I'm still confused. Anyway, so you can remove 3 spell counters from anywhere on the field, then tribute this card. It's a level 1, so you could 1-for-1 this, honestly. Tribute this card, special 1 Mythical Beast effect monster from your deck, except another copy of himself. So, definitely not bad. Summon out any Mythical Beast. You can summon out Cerberus. And you can even summon this guy right here, Mythical Beast Master Cerberus. Okay, so Cerberus just got an upgrade. And he only summons Mythical Beast effect monsters. Usually, I would think since it's a spell counter based, you want to have just generic spellcaster support. I think that would always be a plus, but since they're trying to make this into an archetype, I think it makes sense. As long as they actually make more Mythical Beast monsters. So, Mythical Beast Master Cerberus, level 8, Spellcaster Pendulum, 28 both ways, and another scale 4. Really? So, I think his Pendulum effect won't be that useful. I mean, his Pendulum effect will be very useful as well, because his scale isn't that useful, so I don't think you're going to want to keep him on scale. So, if you do not control another card in your Utter Pendulum Zone, and, I just realized it says control a card. So, if you set a card into your Utter Pendulum Zone, that immediately eliminates your ability to use the pendulum effect of both of these guys. It's pretty sad, but I guess it's fair. You can destroy this card, and if you do, add one Mythical Beast effect monster from your deck to your hand. So instead of putting a spell counter, you get to add a Mythical Beast effect monster. So you can actually just add Mythical Beast Jackal. And these guys' effects aren't once per turn. Actually, yeah, they are. It says it before the actual effect, so I kind of missed that. Since they are once per turn, but you can use Master Cerberus to search into Magical Beast Jackal. And so what you can do with that, so since Cerberus activating is one spell counter, and then Jackal activating is 2 spell counters, and then Jackal's effect to put a spell counter on the card, there's going to be 3 spell counters. So from there, if you have another Jackal in your hand, you can normal summon out that Jackal, or 1-for-1 it, and use his effect to tribute, remove 3 spell counters, and then special summon a Mythical Beast effect monster. And the nice thing is that he removes the 3 spell counters before he tributes himself. So even if the spell counters are on him himself, he can remove them. If he would have tributed himself first, that would have made him bad, because then the spell counters would have to be on other cards on your side of the field. But because he removes first, it can be on him as well, and then you can tribute. So monster effect for Master Cerberus is that each time a spell card is activated, place 2 spell counters on this card. So yeah, the higher level spell counter monsters usually have this effect. I think Breaker, the Pendulum Warrior. I don't know what the big boy version of Breaker is called. The one that wears when it's Pendulum summoned, it gets 3 spell counters instead of 2. I think that one has that effect. It might not, but no, I don't think it does. Just ignore that. But it's still a card you can use with this deck, just because these guys are pendulums as well, and the Magical Abductor as well, magical something. There's a whole bunch of spell counter cards that kind of do work with pendulums, so this won't be the worst thing in the world. So next off is that if there are 4 more spell counters on the field, this card cannot be destroyed by card effects. Okay, so he gains a little immunity by keeping spell counters on your side of the field. So would you use the Magical Citadel with this deck? I don't know yet, because we don't know if this deck is going to get its own version of a field spell. But if not, then you can use Magical Citadel. It definitely wouldn't hurt. And then once per turn, you can remove 4 spell counters from your field, target 1 monster your opponent controls, banish it, and if you do, this card gains attack equal to the original attack of the banished monster until the end of the turn. So I'm glad that's not a quick effect, because that would have made that broken. And you have to remove 4 spell counters, and you have to target as well. So it's not the best effect in the world, but it definitely can get you an edge over your opponent. Simply because removing 4 spell counters isn't hard. that's not something that's hard to get, unless your opponent uses no spell counters. No spell cards at all. But even then, it's getting 4 spell counters can be real quick. If you do spell power grasp, that's that's actually really easy. And he gains 2 spell counters every time a spell card is activated, and that's not even once per turn. So 1 spell power grasp would actually, well, not 1. one one spell power grasp and literally any other card. So literally two spell cards can get you this guy's effect. A pendulum scale, you know what I'm saying? The only problem I have with this guy is that he's a pendulum. I don't know why he's a pendulum. I guess his pendulum effect is okay, but it's like if you're gonna make them pendulums and then just make their pendulum scales worthless, I feel like there's no point to them being a pendulum. You could have just had its effect is where if you control like they could have just had the pendulum effect be like a hand effect. You know what I'm saying? Because his levels are way too like their levels are way too contradictory. Like 1 and 8, like you're not going to be able to pendulum summon those a lot. There aren't really a lot of monsters that go between those scales that are really generic, other than the Supreme Kings, and those aren't really. I don't think though that would be a good option for a deck like this, especially when these two rely on having your other pendulum zone open to activate their effects. So yeah. There should be a spell and a trap card. Okay, so the spell is a magical boost. You can only activate one of these per turn. So you send the top two cards of your deck to the graveyard, then target one face-up card in the field to place spell counters on, and place up to 2 spell counters on that card. Okay. So free spell counters pretty much by milling 2. What is this, Lightsworn? And if this card in its owner possession is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, well, that's immediately not going to happen. It's a quick play spell card. I mean, it's rare that you're going to get Tone Twistered. But you can special summon one monster from your deck that you can place a spell counter on if you do place up to 2 spell counters on it. So, just you can set this as bait, Twin Twister bait, and then if it actually gets Twin Twistered or Heavy Storm Duster, then, you get to use this effect. It's not the worst thing, but I wouldn't really call it reliable. And lastly, we have Magical Burst, a continuous trap card. You can only use its second effect once per turn. So each time an opponent's monster effect is activated, you place one spell counter on this card when that effect resolves. So I assume when that effect resolves means that when it's finished its effect. So when, like, let's say something like a Masterpiece, right? So let's say I use Magical Burst and my opponent uses Masterpiece effect targeting a different card in the field. What I would assume would happen is that when the effect what it means by when the effect resolves, that means after the effect is finished. So after Masterpiece banishes a card activation, and then when it resolves, the card gets destroyed, and then after that's finished, that's when this gets spell counter. Before, if there were any other chain link, you know what I'm saying? So let's say chain link 1 was let's say Chainlink 1 was like a Dark Hole, right? Since this guy with Masterpiece forgot to tribute a spell card. So Masterpiece then chains is Chainlink 2, banishing a continuous trap card from his graveyard to target a card in the field to destroy it, right? So nothing happens yet. So no other cards in the chain. So Chainlink 2 resolves, and Masterpiece destroys the card that it targeted. After that card is destroyed and Masterpiece is finished, before the Dark Hole resolves, that's when this card would gain a spell counter. And then after this card gains a spell counter, that's when Dark Hole resolves, destroying all monsters on the field. So that's what I think it would mean when it says when that effect resolves. So just be wary of that. So second effect is that you can send this card with 6 or more spell counters to the graveyard, add 1 spell card from your deck to your hand. It sucks that it doesn't say spell counters on your side of the field. The fact that it can search any spell card is definitely a reason why they wouldn't do that. It is actually pretty generic if you think about it. Because, you don't have to use other spell counter based cards to use this card by itself. It's just using other spell counter based cards like Mythical Beast Shackle, destroying itself and placing a spell card on this card could definitely be helpful. The problem is that it only gains spell counters by itself when your opponent's monster effect activates. So unless your opponent is playing something like Cardians, where they activate their effects a lot, like in one turn, this card is probably going to be pretty slow. And it's something that you might try, like you're gonna use, but it's gonna like hold you back a bit because you're trying to get that second effect, but the situation just won't let you have it because it requires too much. I feel like that's gonna be the fate of this card. But it's not the worst support in the world, and I think just seeing spell counters again is just a nice refresher to see. Just as a reminder, like to how much Yu-Gi-Oh actually has, and yeah. So I do think it's nice that they're putting spell counters into an actual archetype now because I don't think spell counters have had an actual archetype like ever. So putting them into an archetype may actually make them more usable because archetypes usually have more synergy in themselves and usually tend to be better as decks. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Tell me guys what you think about these cards in the comments, or if not, then see you guys later. Peace.